if the Buffalo Bills are going to win the Super Bowl, then they need to make one more trade, and a big one. Stevie Johnson, am I wrong?
You're not wrong at all. I feel like they need to go on the defensive side, add another solid piece to that defensive unit after losing Dwayne Carter, and then we'll go from there.
Well, Stevie, some good news when it comes to Matt Milano. Seems like his return is approaching, which is massive news for the Buffalo Bills and their defense. You could look at him as a pseudo-trade deadline acquisition, but I'm with Stevie. Some help on defense would definitely be a huge boost for the Bills.
Yeah, I think the Bills on offense are starting to look like a complete team. I think if they can add on defense, they'll be complete all around.
Welcome into Broken Table, powered by FanDuel. I'm Aaron Korolnek with Chris Hein, Tekeyah Singh, and Stevie Johnson. The Buffalo Bills coming off a dominant win in Seattle, absolutely crushing the Seahawks in almost every respect, offensively, defensively, and when you consider the AFC East as a whole, the Miami Dolphins lose, the New York Jets lose, no real injuries to report for Buffalo coming out of the game. Chris, I mean, you can't really ask for a better result.
Well, and that's why I'm looking beyond the AFC East, and I'm looking to the conference, and I'm looking to the Super Bowl. But most specifically, next week that trade deadline is here, and for the Bills, I'm thinking one name: Budda Baker. Ooh. And I know the Cardinals might not be sellers; they might not look like the sellers that they were a couple weeks ago. But if the Bills could bring in Budda Baker, I think he's owed about $7 million left on his contract. Expiring contract would probably be an expensive rental. That. But that's the one area of weakness I think they need to add. Stevie, how good would the Bills be if they were to add someone like Budda Baker?
Man, that's actually a great name right there. I never even really put that together to add a piece like Budda Baker on the Buffalo Bills. But when you bring it up, I mean, he's a great dynamic player, playmaker. He can play multiple positions. He's cerebral also, and it'll just only add to that defense that's getting better as the season goes on.
We talked about Amari Cooper a couple weeks ago when he was acquired from the Cleveland Browns and how he assimilates himself into the Bills offense, which is clearly a little bit of a slow burn. When it comes to a safety coming into a new defense, Stevie, how difficult, how easy is that relative to someone like Amari Cooper on offense?
Well, on the defensive side, it's hard, it's a little bit hard for me to really give my expertise on it since I didn't, play that position. But, talking to a lot of DBs, it kind of comes with the territory of familiarity, with a system or a coach or even players around the team. So a lot of things can play a factor into that. And when you look at a guy like Budda Baker, potentially if they came to a Buffalo Bills team, with him being so versatile and dynamic where he's been in Arizona, I think he'll fit in anywhere because he's a student of the game. Knowing different positions, it allows you to fit in wherever you get placed if you were to, have to travel to another team.
I think McDermott, too, a guy who we know coaches up a secondary better than anybody. The money thing will be an issue. Now, Bean said, I think, to Ross Tucker, they're going to swing for the fences. They're still going to try to make a move. They have just under $3 million left on the cap. Budda Baker, I believe, is owed $7.1 million. So we talked about this before. No one knows how the NFL salary cap works. Turn something into a guarantee. All of a sudden, you free up some space, and then maybe Bean can free it up. So I think the money's the big issue. Now, before, we're going to get to Bills Dolphins a little later, but we all wanted to bring a trade to the table. That was mine. So not necessarily a Bills trade. But Tekeyah, let's start with you. What is one trade you want to see in the NFL before we get to the deadline next week?
Okay, you know me, I like long shots. This one's a bit of a long shot. Sticking in the AFC, though, Nico Collins is supposed to be returning. Diggs is announced out.
He's done for the year, yeah.
Yeah, completely out for the season. So the Texans are kind of looking for some wide receiver help. I'm going to go with the long shot Cooper Kupp to the Texans. I know it's a long shot. I know Houston needs help on their O-line. But I don't know. I think Cooper Kupp is pretty interesting to Houston. I know it's more realistic to get Mike Williams there.
Yeah, that's for sure. Mike Williams seems like definitely. I think the Kupp stuff was buzzing about a week ago. The Bills, Diana Recevian mentioned that the Bills were mentioned in that. But have the Rams gotten too good that maybe Kupp might not even be a guy who they'd want to move?
NFC West is as close as any division in football right now. It's up for grabs. San Fran,
also works
Arizona,
against my Budda Baker trade
Chargers.
too, right?
Well, that's it, right? And I don't think any of these teams are ready to pack it in, the Rams included. Stafford's looked really good. Really good. And when you have Kupp and Nakua as well together, I would argue that their offense is as good as anybody in the NFC, and Kyron Williams too. It's nasty.
I know. It doesn't look like they want to move Kupp, but Have you seen Cup's latest post? It was very odd on Instagram.
Oh,
it was
all
him
right.
like waving.
Tekeyah, go Twitter detective here. Let's go.
I went
I
full
love it.
detective here, okay? I went sleuth. But he posted something on Instagram and he was like waving at the fans and like blowing kisses. Like, you could read into that a little bit, like him saying goodbye. You never know.
Some deep Reddit thread thinking.
Yes.
I'm going to bring up my favorite Cooper Cup Instagram post, which is him wearing a Bills hat from way back in the day.
I remember that as well.
It's coming to fruition.
Stevie, what's the one realistic or unrealistic? What's the one trade you want to see happen before the deadline?
I would go stay with the NFC, and I would say with the Lions picking up a defensive end. You know, they had their guy, but he unfortunately he got injured. Now I feel like that team, that offense, the defense, the special teams, that aura around Detroit, the Detroit Lions, is actually building a lot of real momentum, how they're dominating teams week in and week out. So I feel like if they added another piece to that defense, like a Max Crosby, any DN that's out there, I've seen Jadeveon Clowney. I would love for Khalil Mack or one of those to move somewhere also, like to Buffalo. But just sticking with Detroit, I would say just to see that team blow up and continue doing what they've been doing is impressive. So adding a piece to the Detroit Lions would be good for me.
Honestly, with Hutchinson out, I still think Detroit might be the best team in football. And if you
for
were
sure.
to give them someone like Max Crosby, which would cost a lot, they're way over the top. But I think Stevie kind of nailed it. The defensive end market is robust. Zadarius Smith, another name that you didn't mention, and these guys can kind of be had for 4th, 5th round picks. So I would love for the Bills to make a move on someone like Clowney. I think that would make a ton of sense, especially if you can get him for like a 6th round pick. Like last year with the Ravens, he kind of turned it on. Like he's still a good player.
Hassan Reddick, perhaps, as well with the Jets, which leads into my idea for a trade. And it is my personal perspective that the New York Jets need to go full fire sale mode. So much so that the wide receiver they acquired just 2 weeks ago in Davante Adams should be shipped out to the Houston Texans. It makes all the sense in the world. Diggs is done for the year. Nico Collins dealing with the hamstring. Davante Adams may not have unpacked his suitcase yet. Easy to get out of there. Get away from Rodgers. I'm sure Adams is like, man, this guy's talking about drinking cayenne pepper and water as his
Apparently has good health
magic elixir that's going to cure what ails he and the New York Jets. Adams must be looking at what's going on with this franchise and thinking, get me out of here. This is not Rodgers from Green Bay. I need to get to a real quarterback. Get me to Houston where I can rehabilitate not only my value, but also my reputation from the association with Aaron Rodgers. Adams to the Texans. Recoup that 3rd round pick. You've got Woody Johnson, whoever else, Joe Douglas in the Jets organization. The time is now to pack it in. Davante, get out of there.
This Jets team is an absolute meme. That would be the funniest thing to ever happen.
They took a swing, right? They took a swing, Stevie, on Adams, and it's already gotten ugly there in New York. So
This
I don't
is the
know,
NFL
man.
though. It's entertainment, and we love it. I think all these teams should do it to the fullest, like picking up players, trading players. I mean, you're going to get that goal, so you got to give it everything you got. And seeing how things play out, I think the Houston Texans are in a position to grab somebody. So I really like what Tekeyah was saying with Cup. You know, him being one of those technician receivers, that's perfect for CJ Stroud. You know, he can feed a guy like Cup who runs his routes as precise as he does. And then also with what you said, AK, bringing, Devontae.
That's right.
So, hey, it's time to go somewhere else now. It ain't what we thought. So why sit there and rock?
I got one more, Stevie.
let's take a
I
step
got one
forward.
more.
Let's
I got
move
one more
Aaron
trade idea. Well, exactly. Aaron Rodgers to Minnesota. He'll follow Brett Favre's
exactly.
career exactly. Starting in Green Bay, all the success. Then goes to the Jets. Ooh, not so good. Minnesota, yeah, we remember that crossbody pass in the NFC title game, I believe, against New Orleans.
One of the best announcer calls ever.
Exactly.
Like,
so
this isn't Detroit. Like,
Yeah,
unbelievable.
I just feel like the fans, they gave up all the way, but I think they're over the Rodgers experiment, so his name not too hot right now as far as to go to a team like Minnesota. I think they're good.
Speaking of Rodgers and the AFC East, they're dead in the water. They don't have a shot in the division. They're probably not going to make the playoffs. But the Bills' opponent this week maybe could have still turned their season around, and that's the Dolphins. But this is not the opponent for them to get right against. I think the Bills are 23-5 against the AFC East since 2000. Best against any division in football, but specifically Josh Allen. And let's bring these numbers up because they're absurd. 12-2 career against the Dolphins, including playoffs. 275.3 pass yards per game, 37 touchdowns, 9 picks, almost 50 rush yards a game. And this is where it gets real crazy. In the 13 regular season games he's played against Miami, he's won Player of the Week 5 times. Miami Dolphins, meet your father. His name is Josh Allen. I feel like he just loves beating them up. Maybe a little less now with Christian Wilkins gone, but this is just a matchup Josh feasts on, and I think we're going to see more of the same of that Sunday. Stevie, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like this is a confidence booster game. And the boys just got to come out and do what they've been doing for the past, 13 games that we've seen them play against the Miami Dolphins. This team is, they're talented, of course, but it's not a team that's built to last against the Buffalo Bills. So I'm looking for another big confidence booster for the boys.
See, it's funny. You think about Allen and the Bills owning the Dolphins. I almost think it's Miami being completely incapable of matching up against quality football teams. You look at the splits. Tua versus teams under 500 is 11-2 with a 24-8 touchdown interception ratio. Against teams over 500, 1-6, 8-9. Mike McDaniel 3-10 against teams over 500. This is a team that beats up on crappy teams and gets dominated by quality teams. We've seen it against the Buffalo Bills, the other top teams in the AFC. There's a quote from my friend Al's brother over at TSN 1050. The Finns are frauds, and he is spot on with that. We've seen it for a number of years now, and I think we'll see it again on Sunday, Stevie.
Facts. I definitely agree with that. I love those numbers. That's the game within the game. And I was looking at some numbers also, and I was seeing like what was the difference with the Bills and the Miami Dolphins. And what I got was, I was looking at third down conversions. And they were pretty much the same. I was like, okay, why is it different? Okay, we have some better star players, I would say. And then I looked at fourth down conversions. The Dolphins are going for it maybe 16 times, and they got it twice, 2 out of 16.
Desperation.
But desperation, exactly. So you see how the games are being played with the Dolphins. And then with the Bills, they're 8 for 8 on fourth down conversions. So I also looked at time of possession. The Bills can carry the ball and hold the balls way longer than the Miami Dolphins, who's probably a one-shot pony where they get a quick pass, something hot, some cool highlight, but that's all they have. They can't sustain the entire game. So that's why I see the game within the game of the Bills dominating the Dolphins this week.
Also, speaking of numbers, the Bills are 8-0 at home versus the Dolphins since 2017, including the playoffs.
Do you remember? Does anyone know Stevie, the last time the Dolphins won in Buffalo, 2016, Rex Ryan's last game, Jay Ajayi went for 200 plus.
200?
And I don't know if people remember this. Rex Ryan's D only had 10 men on the field, I think, for a crucial fourth down, and then he was fired 2 days later. So it's through the couple months, Stevie, we've been working with you and chatting with you. I feel like you get a certain smile when you're talking about just how much do you hate the Dolphins? I feel like you hate them more than any other team. You seem very excited about their demise.
No, it's just so when the season started, they got Jalen Waddle, they got Cheetah, Tua, it seemed like it's so much media around them, and you're like, okay, maybe they are going to be good, maybe they'll compete with us, and then you see them do things and it's be like, oh goodness, like these guys, forget about them, So it's just like when we get a chance to play against them, I'm just happy for us to dominate those guys, because it's all clout, it's clout for Miami.
Is there any person in the NFL whose star has fallen over the last, let's say, 18 months more than Mike McDaniel, the coach of the Dolphins, who everyone was hailing as this offensive genius? This guy is revolutionizing the sport. But a lot of the stats I rattled off there just a couple of minutes ago with regards to Miami, their performance against quality teams versus, let's call them subpar teams, it's completely different. McDaniel, Tekeyah, maybe not as highly regarded, and that might be putting it mildly, as he used to be.
No, you're right. And I don't know. I don't think he's had a good season. I know Tua went down.
That's true. That is true.
But it's still, the numbers aren't good. Tyreek Hill's supposed to be this amazing star. He looks, I don't know.
Well, Tyreek said I got to start him in fantasy. I did, and he didn't do anything for me last week. What a liar.
To your point about McDaniel, and I think Stevie might have good insight on this, credit to Mike Lombardi, who calls Mike McDaniel the DJ, and basically says he's not a guy who comes in as a head coach and is going to build culture. He's just a play caller, and right now he's just spinning different tracks, trying to get something to hit in terms of play calling. Is there a difference? And let's compare him to McDermott, who has built a culture and built a program. Do you get the vibe from McDaniel that he's not really a culture guy and more just a glorified play caller?
Nah, well, actually, I would say he can be one of those guys that can develop a culture, but it's going to take time. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's unfortunate because I really can care less about what's going on with the Dolphins, but I've put myself in a position where when I was with the Bills and it was, the Patriots dominating, those teams was more dominant than this time. That was just the time that I was in. So McDaniel is just like, hey, this is just the time that you in. Like the division that you're in, you're not gonna win against the Bills. You guys should dominate against the Patriots now because it's open and possibly the Jets. But at this point, we see what the Miami Dolphins are, and it's just a product of their division. He got to go somewhere else or just ride it out and keep building up players.
Well, that's a good segue, Stevie, because you were on a Bills team who beating the Patriots just never happened. Like I know every time we see that Tom Brady versus the Bills stat, it just crushes us. How disheartening is it as a player to go into a game like this when you know you can't beat these guys and you never beat these guys?
Well, you kind of don't go in knowing that you can't beat them. It's just like, is our management doing everything that we can do to try to compare with these guys, to compete with these guys? And we start seeing a switch at the end of, my career with the Bills where they was going out to get players and trying to re-sign players. But those things matter, but it takes time also. So, they got some acquisitions that's talented players, but at the end of the day, it's not going to happen over one season, especially when you don't have a player like a Tom Brady or a Josh Allen to lead your team. Not throwing shade on Tua or anything, but I just don't feel like he's going to be the one to take them there, given what the history has shown.
There's a ton of star power in Buffalo on Sunday. I mean, we talk about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Tua Tagovailoa. I wonder if last week another star was born in Keon Coleman, who just crushed Seattle. Some of those shots, not only of the way
blocking,
that, the
too,
blocking,
man.
man. I'm exactly with you. 120 plus receiving yards, was dominant in that respect, but he was run blocking. James Cook was feasting. They were running over to Coleman's side. I do wonder as the season progresses, Stevie, of course, Amari Cooper assimilates himself into the offense a little bit more. Shakir was a monster against Seattle as well. Could we be seeing maybe the ascension of Keon Coleman in the second half and what that could look like for Buffalo's perspective? Because he ran more than 80% of routes on Sunday against the Seahawks.
Oh, man. I mean, we've seen a glimpse of it when we had Stephon Diggs with Josh Allen connecting with Diggs for those 3 to 4 years. And we've seen what the electricity brought. I think with this one's going to be even better because you got to think about the size of Keon Coleman. And then, like you said, we're bringing a whole nother aspect of blocking. The guy blocked the defender while the play was going, the running back cutting left and right, and he still controls the guy out of bounds, slams him into the bench.
I love that.
Some Gatorade, helps him up, and then gets back out there, pushes him again. Like you seeing a whole nother evolution of a receiver, and we literally have a star in Keon Coleman, and I'm excited to see the rest, what he's got for the rest of the season.
Remember the conversations we were having about the end of the first round? Oh, the Bills traded down Xavier Worthy, so dominant. He's so fast. No one can possibly stop the Chiefs. And I would argue at least through 8-9 weeks, Coleman has shown an explosive element. Of course, Worthy's had his moments as well, but I think Coleman looks like a more consistent NFL receiver. And I think for the Bills, they deserve some credit for that pick.
Worthy is a gadget luxury. And for the Chiefs, that might be exactly what they need. But you and Stevie have both touched on it. The blocking is a huge element. Last year with this team, it would be predictable where they would switch out receivers and stuff, and you would know if Gabe Davis was on the field last year, a lot of times that was a running play because he's a great blocking receiver. Now you can have Keon Coleman on the field, and the defense doesn't know what you're going to do because he's such a great blocking receiver as well. So obviously I would put Brian Thomas Jr. is having a better year in terms of, if we're ranking the rookie receivers, Marvin Harrison looks good, but a little inconsistent. Brian Thomas Jr. looks like the best. Keon Coleman is right there with those guys, though.
Neighbors has been good, too.
Oh, Neighbors, obviously, yeah.
Yeah,
and you got to take into account that Keon was playing in a different role. He wasn't in his natural role in the offense. They were trying to find it or force it on him. But then when you add Amari, I heard you talk about Amari getting acclimated. Just him showing up and being in fulfilling that X or whatever position, that's putting Keon in his most comfortable role. So now we're seeing that evolution even faster. So he'll catch up with the guys like Neighbors and Brian Thomas. Those are also different situations where they're probably losing a lot. They need to throw the ball to those guys. So, their numbers is going to be skewed to, the lack of power in their team.
It is really interesting to see what the Bills have as far as their skill position players, what James Cook did to Seattle. He's done all year. He's been excellent. Shakir was incredible. And we've seen the Coleman games. We've seen Amari Cooper in his debut with the 66 yards and the touchdown. We're just waiting for that big Dalton Kincaid game. That 100-yard game has to be coming at some point, right? And I know we talk about everybody eats, and that's a mantra we haven't.
It's actually now it's.
I was just gonna say
maybe
that
eating a little bit more. And if everyone's eating a little bit more, everyone's satiated to a point where I think they are happy where they're at statistically, and that's exciting. And we saw it against the Seahawks, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see it against Miami this week as well.
Now, sorry, go ahead, Tekeyah.
No, I was going to also say that everybody eats mantra. It started off looking good. It went downhill a little bit. Now it's back up. Keon Coleman, can we also talk about the fact that he's not just doing well against bad or mid teams? The Titans defense has the number one total defense, and he dominated them. So he's doing well against good defenses. I'm actually very impressed with him.
And we talked about it a bit the last couple weeks, actually, of everybody slotted in their proper spot. And I know Stevie's old teammate, Ryan Fitzpatrick, tweeted something out last 2 years. Khalil Shakir, 83 targets, 75 catches.
Efficiency.
This guy does not... If the ball's thrown his way, he is catching it. And I know the Bills are a horrible screen team when it comes to running back screens, but they're running these little bubble screens to Shakir. And you're seeing the athleticism of Deion Dawkins and this line getting out and just railroading people. And it feels like Joe Brady is really coming into his own as a play caller now with all of these pieces fitting.
Yeah. Great addition, adding that the receiver screen, adding into the offensive lineman being involved in the offense. That's a complete unit. We can jump from the running backs doing what they're doing to the receivers, and then when you think about, Shakir, how he catch the ball and get a screen, he's just like Welker. And when he catch the ball and get one of those quick screens from Brady, he's up the field instantly. We've seen this from Shakir, even in his early years with the team. He was catching everything. Every opportunity he had, he was catching it. Big plays, big downs, only a couple of plays being on the field, he's still catching it. In the rain, he was making plays. So I'm looking forward to him being one of those guys to possibly end his career in Buffalo if they take care of him just right.
And there's just so many reasons for optimism right now if you're a Bills fan. Just looking at the division, which is essentially out of reach for the Jets or the Dolphins or maybe the Patriots. I mean, they're all around the same type of record. So the Bills have a 3.5 game buffer in the division. I think they can experiment down the stretch and try to keep guys as healthy as possible leading into the playoffs. This is a luxury that few teams have around the NFL. The Chiefs have it for sure, being undefeated to this point, but not many other organizations.
Not even the Ravens. Like the Ravens have the Steelers to worry about.
Well, yeah, the Steelers are 6-2, and they've got the revelation that is Russell Wilson at quarterback. So you consider the AFC as a whole. I think Houston, as they get Nico Collins back, maybe trade for my guy Devontae Adams.
Playing in that division too, they're going to have some easier games.
Yes, very much so.
It seems like we're all really taking a premature victory lap on the Bills against the Dolphins this Sunday.
We are,
but
you know how that goes.
There is one thing working against us, and you guys are probably going to be not believe it, but it's daylight savings. Let's get weird here, because here's Josh Allen, last 3 games on daylight savings. 0-3 record, including a loss as a 14.5 point favorite against the Jags, a loss as a 10.5 point favorite against the Jets, 1 pass touchdown, 5 interceptions, sacked 10 times, 3 fumbles. Something weird happens on daylight savings with Josh Allen.
Wow.
That you're losing twice to a double-digit favorite?
It's concerning.
It makes no sense whatsoever, but this is just something I'm going to flag for Sunday.
Someone needs to get extra sleep.
This is the good daylight savings, though, for anybody who doesn't have kids. All right, let's transition and talk the rest of the NFL. And what better jumping point than Stevie Johnson's Villain of the Week?
Why so serious?
So for my Villain of the Week, I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson. So his team just lost against the Cleveland Browns, snapping their 5-game win streak. He threw for 289 yards, which was his 3rd most in the season, but it came in a loss. So I feel like with the Denver Broncos coming to town, he's going to be the villain. He's going to get back on track and get prepared for the Cincinnati Bengals the week after.
I think there is great shame in losing to Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns, but losing to Jameis Winston and the Cleveland Browns isn't nearly as egregious. I mean, Deshaun Watson, 19 starts as a Brown, 0 300-yard passing games. Jameis Winston, 1 start as a Brown, 334 passing yards. I mean, You got to give Jameis some love. And I know he's your villain of the week, Stevie Lamar. But I mean, Jameis, we got to give him a shout out.
2 viral moments too.
Yes,
from Jameis
exactly.
pregame
He's
and
eating the
postgame.
W's. I mean, we love this guy.
Yeah, big props to Jameis, man. Perseverance, overcoming, humbling himself, and then he stepped in and did what he's supposed to. Like you said, first game, 334 yards and 3 touchdowns and beating the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, his pregame speeches is doing something. It's definitely sparking them boys.
Quoting Eminem.
Yes.
I love it. I have huge respect.
He also did a very Jameis thing too, which is throw the game-losing interception. Kyle Hamilton just dropped it.
Oh, what an egregious drop for Hamilton.
So-
My goodness.
Now, I'm guessing, Stevie, then you're not worried about the Ravens, but that's now the second time they've lost to Cleveland and they've lost to the Raiders. Those are 2 bad losses. Tekeyah, do we look at the Ravens, do we put them on the same class as the Chiefs at the top of the AFC?
I don't know if I put them on the same class as the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are in a class of their own. I will say, though, I don't think as a Bills fan that I'm that scared of either of those teams. I think
I would
in the
agree.
AFC.
But we've been brainwashed.
We have been brainwashed. But we have the MVP favorite quarterback.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So you're not afraid of Kansas City, nor are you afraid of Baltimore?
I don't know.
What
do
are
you
you afraid
see,
of?
Do you see the way Patrick Mahomes is playing? I mean, he makes things happen, but the interceptions, everyone was so worried about Josh Allen and his interceptions last season. He has 1, and it wasn't even his fault this season.
Yeah,
I
Cooper
think
kind of fell down on
he
that
fell,
route. Yeah.
right? I think that I don't know. I obviously have to see how they play against these teams, but I think that the Bills could beat both of them.
Absolutely. And I almost look at the AFC as a coin toss between 5, maybe 6 teams. Like, do you consider Pittsburgh as a team in the mix? Their defense is so good.
That's fine. They're not a
their
threat at
defense
all.
is
They're
good.
not a threat at all. Okay.
No, I don't look at Pittsburgh as a threat. Like
Do you look at Houston as a threat?
I do not, because the Bills played their worst game of the season.
worst.
And we're tied with Houston with 30 seconds left with the ball. So like, and that was in Houston.
And now
It
Houston
was.
has injuries, Diggs, and maybe Nico Collins comes
You don't
back.
look at the Chargers as a threat in the AFC?
I think the Chargers are a good scrappy bunch that will make the playoffs and can maybe upset someone in the first round. I don't think that's Buffalo. What I love about the Chargers is the same thing I love about this version of the Bills. They play with a sense of physicality, and that is what you need when you hit the playoffs. And I feel like Baltimore and KC both do that as well, but now the Bills are playing with that same level of physicality.
They have swagger. It looks like they're getting confidence. Cooper to the team. I think they look like a complete offense. Like you guys said earlier, adding pieces on defense. They might be complete all around, but I don't know. I don't feel that scared.
So Baltimore just added Deontay Johnson. Stevie, what do you think adding a receiver like him does to that offense?
Well, it gives Lamar, some more comfort in a receiver that can make plays, that has the ability to space create. I don't feel like he's all the way there just yet. So that acquisition is good for them in the long run, maybe, but we'll have to see how that go. With the Buffalo Bills, the only thing that worry me is which Buffalo Bills team is going to show up. If they come with the energy, then I feel like we can beat anybody. With Keon Coleman doing the things that he's doing as far as making a name as far as a blocker, that's bringing energy. So, I'm kind of confident in what the team is doing and what they'll show. But, like I said, I can't just go out there and flat out say we're going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. It depends on what Bills team show up.
Yeah, it's almost with the Chiefs where it's irrelevant what they do in the regular season.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it time and time again, not only in the last 2 Super Bowl seasons, but in years prior. They find a way to get it done. And adding Hopkins in there, and yes, last week I called him totally washed up and irrelevant, but he still does present another element that I think will change the way that Kansas City plays and makes them even more of a threat. And that's a dangerous proposition.
Do you
for
think
the
the
rest
Chiefs
of
need
the
to
AFC.
make another move or no?
I don't think so. I mean, they made their move for Hopkins, and everyone in the AFC has made their move when it comes to receiver for the most part, save the Houston Texans, who actually lost a receiver and will probably need to add one. But Baltimore did it, the Jets did it, Buffalo did it, Kansas City did it, and Deontay Johnson, what he's able to do. I mean, he was a number 1 receiver
I think
last year.
that's a good. I think that's a good fit
they
for
give
them,
up nothing for him. Why not take a swing with Deontay and maybe he's able to do something for the Ravens come playoff time. It'll take some time, but they've got some good players there on offense. Mark Andrews was completely irrelevant in that offense. Now he's
back,
reemerged and looks like Mark Andrews of a couple of years ago. So that's got to be exciting for the Ravens.
Yeah, and they have that. Sorry, go ahead, Stevie.
I want to give a shout out again to Jameis because he just showed the league that this dominant Baltimore Ravens team can be stopped. Not only did they stop Lamar Jackson, but they also stopped Derrick Henry. So, that's something that's a big confidence boost for guys to go in against the Ravens later on in the season.
I think, if anything, it's showing if Cleveland had a real quarterback, and maybe they do now in Jameis Winston resurgence, but if Cleveland had a real quarterback, are we not talking about them as a playoff team
For
and
sure.
maybe on top of the North? Because they have a great head coach. They have talent all across that roster. They were just being held back by Watson.
The worst quarterback, perhaps, performance in 7 games that we've ever seen. That's how
How do
bad
you-
it was.
Him or
And-
Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, have Amari Cooper if Jameis was playing. So
Yeah, true. Amari Cooper's still a Brown if Jameis is the starter all
true.
year. Okay, let's transition now. One of our new favorite segments, Tales from the Tailgate. We talked about it a little bit last week. Bills Mafia absolutely took over Seattle to the point where Geno Smith even said he had trouble hearing the play calls coming in. This is the 12th man. This is supposed to be a fortress of a stadium, and the Bills took it over. Stevie, would you ever expect that to happen in a place like Seattle?
no, I didn't expect to hear Geno say that, especially with you, like you said, this is the 12th man. This is a prominent stadium in fan base. But when you got a Buffalo Bills Mafia that's traveling from the east to west like they do, I mean, you can't really compare and you can't compete with fan bases. The Bills Mafia, they're undefeated.
They are one of the best traveling fan bases
By
in
far.
the NFL, I think, by far. But also, can we talk about the fact that against the 49ers and the Bills, the Seahawks put up 3 points in the first half? Like, that fan base is deflated.
And I don't blame them. Like, I don't know what Seattle does. I know we talked about the West before. They're sort of hanging around there, but I don't know what they do well. But I do know what Bills Mafia does well, and that is this fan we are showing right here. AK, this is your guy.
I mean, that man does not skip leg day. That is a physique I am extremely envious of. And frankly, I would consider wearing, is that a Speedo? Would you
For sure it's
qualify
Speedo.
that as a Speedo?
Tidy whiteys.
It's also
Only
election
in
day's
Buffalo.
coming for you down there, Stevie. So maybe
Yeah.
he's just really patriotic too.
Stevie would look better than I would in that thing. Steve, would you ever consider rocking that Speedo?
Man, I couldn't do it. But the funny thing is, I know the person recording that. That's actually one of the founding fathers or mothers of Bills Mafia.
Yeah, she made the trip. I saw too through her social. She made her way to Canada too. So another fun. When you're going to Seattle, you might as well make your way to Vancouver as well.
I hate
But yeah,
that video.
How can you hate this video?
I
What is
hate
the
it.
hate about this?
And the fact that he just pulled his pants to his ankles, like, ugh.
Yeah, if
I
I was
hate
in the
it.
crowd, I'd be looking around like, dude.
To me, it's the
Please.
this. It's the Hogan flex where he's got the
Oh,
arms.
It's
I
almost like
hate
the
it.
Travis Kelce
Yes.
touchdown celebration that Taylor Swift is emulating on stage.
So it's going to be impossible to transition off of that, but let's do it with our staff best bet. I was the one who let us down last week. Stevie is now on top of the standings with just one
Nice.
loss, and he's been taking spreads now too. So, Stevie, you can kick it off. What are you on this week?
All right, so this week I've been doing a lot of talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, the acquisition of D-Hop. So it's been kind of brutal for me. So when I had the opportunity to pick my lock of the week and I saw the Bills going against the Miami Dolphins, it was an easy lock for me. So I'm going Buffalo Bills over the Miami Dolphins. Lock it in.
Taking the spread there? We're taking money line?
He's Stevie's spread only
Yeah,
now.
take
Don't worry,
6.5.
he's
Take
spread.
6.5. Take the points, Stevie. You're good.
I just feel like we're going to score a lot and they're going to score a little. So we may not, the total over may not happen, but we're definitely going to beat these guys by more than 6.
All right, there you go.
So, and let's just make this an SGP plus
Ooh.
because my bet also is from that Bills game, and it is Josh Allen over 1.5 touchdown passes. I was let down by this bet last week with Joe Burrow. I feel like I kind of got robbed there, but we talked about the numbers before, and we can bring them up again. Josh Allen absolutely owns the Dolphins. He's like 300 plus total yards, multiple touchdowns. It's going to happen again unless daylight savings comes and
Daylight
switches over.
savings.
And Tekeyah, I think you're also on the SGP plus train.
I am. I'm sticking with the Bills. Miami is tied for fourth in most rushing touchdowns allowed. I'm going James Cook. He had 3 touchdowns against Miami in week 2. I think he feeds off the momentum. He did really well last week as well, so I think he's feeding off the momentum.
He's in the end zone every week.
Yeah,
Anytime.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It is
I think he had
amazing.
2 in the last game.
Two last week,
Yeah.
and like running over people. It was a Ray Davis like run, but one of them.
A true fantasy football superstar that James Cook has become. Kudos to him and kudos to the Bills offensive line, which is creating a lot of these holes for James Cook. For me, I'm on the Commanders and Giants under 44.5 points. Fading Danny Dimes and that offense. Wow, what a revelation. In the 4 home games that the Giants have played this year, they've scored 7 points or fewer in 3 of them. The under is 10-2 in the last 12 home games for the Giants. And Washington's defense looks pretty good. I could see 28-6, something of that variety. I really like the under between Washington and New York in this one.
I have a pure degen bet for that game.
I'm in.
And it is field goals over. Shout out Chris Breda,
Where
who
is he?
does the graphics for the show. Huge part of the Broken Table family behind the scenes. Chris Breda has been pushing the field goals over, especially you look at Thursday Nighters. Thursday Nighters is hitting like crazy, but you give me 2 whatever, like a divisional game where it's going to be sloppy, and you can adjust field goals over to 4.5, get a little over plus 200. So yeah, I like the under,
Yes.
and I do like that as well. So that's all for us, Stevie. You know how to close us out.
Yeah, remember to take care of each other out there, handle business, have fun, and repeat. One love from the Broken Table.